The Great Power. Austro-Hungarian Monarchy, 1850 to 1914. In 1910, former US President Theodore Roosevelt visited Hungary. He met with various illustrious figures, including the great Hungarian writer Kálmán Miksát, author of one of his favorite novels. In his welcome speech to the crowds, Roosevelt said, "I am very proud to be here in this historically significant country. As someone who grew up amongst cowboys in the American West, I am particularly intrigued by the extraordinary journey of this equestrian nation, which arrived here under our pad, making it one of the greatest historical nations of the world. There is a certain intrepidity, freedom, and enthusiasm in the Hungarian character that I have always found admirable. Due to its considerable autonomy, impressive economic and cultural development, and the strong dual state established with Austria, Hungary would once again be shown on maps." So, how did Austrians and Hungarians come to settle their differences? How did a once subjugated country transform into a confident nation? And what factors contributed to the remarkable economic and cultural growth of Hungary at the turn of the century? Autocracy and resistance. In 1849, the Hungarian Revolution was thwarted. Widespread and brutal reprisals ensued. Together with the Austrian government, the young Emperor Franz Joseph sought the permanent eradication of Hungarian sovereignty. Autonomous institutions were dismantled, including Hungary's parliament and local municipal governments. The empire, apprehensive of another war of independence, ensured a significant military presence in Hungary. The emerging autocratic regime operated through strict censorship, the deployment of the gendarmerie, and vast networks of informants surveilling all aspects of social life. Even donning a Kossuth-style beard or possessing old Revolution-era banknotes were punishable offences. During this period, the citadel was constructed on the summit of Buda's Gellért Hill. With cannons aimed toward Pest, it is an imposing fortress overlooking the city and became emblematic of the era. The authorities had ample cause to fear further civil unrest. Hungarian exiles, led by Lajos Kossuth, continued seeking allies and opportunities to reignite the flames of revolution, even taking advantage of international conflicts. However, the millions inside Hungary were powerless to confront the regime openly. Thus, the model form of behavior became passive resistance. They refrained from taking official positions and sought ways to evade taxes. Many wore black for years, whilst Hungarian-style clothing became fashionable. Women adorned their bracelets with the initials of the Arad martyrs. An iconic figure of domestic resistance became Ferenc Deák, one of the leading opposition politicians of the Reform era, whom the Hungarians hailed as the wise man of the nation. The Austro-Hungarian Compromise in 1867. During this time, Austria was fighting two wars, one against the French-Italian alliance and another against Prussia, and was soon defeated in both. These losses caused the emperor to realize that a compromise with the Hungarians was the only way the empire could maintain its power and status. By the mid-1860s, the Hungarian leadership also leaned towards compromise, weary of autocracy and resistance. The Hungarians chose Ferenc Deák to lead the negotiations for the compromise. In 1867, the necessary laws were enacted, followed by the emperor setting up Hungary's first autonomous government since 1848. For its prime minister, he appointed Count Gyula Andrássy, a man who, back in 1849, had been sentenced to death in absentia due to his involvement in the revolution. As such, his name was symbolically attached to the gallows. He'd been exiled in Paris for years, where the ladies would coin him the handsome hanged man. In June 1867, Franz Joseph was crowned King of Hungary. During the spectacular celebrations, it was Count Andrássy who placed the crown upon the head of the man who had formerly sentenced him to death. Though the nation became reconciled to the king, they did not forget his past. In humble peasant homes, images of the Virgin Mary hung next to those of the emperor, as well as Lajos Kossuth, who never accepted the compromise and never returned home. In an open letter, he warned Deák, writing, "Don't take the nation to a point where the future can no longer be under her own control." Deák was convinced that he was acting in the best interests of Hungary, but ultimately chose to stay away from the coronation festivities. With the compromise reached, a dualist state with two centers of power, the Austro-Hungarian Monarchy was born. From 1867, an independent Hungarian government took the lead, exercising legislative power through the democratically elected parliament, with the king becoming a constitutional monarch. However, some of the most crucial powers still remained under imperial authority. These were issues of so-called common affairs, including military matters, overseeing the joint army, and foreign affairs, both of which were funded by the joint Ministry of Finance. As a result, there would be Hungarian ministers appointed by Franz Joseph based in Vienna, through whom he could maintain his influence over military and foreign affairs. A Hungarian could fill the position of finance or foreign minister, as for instance Gyula Andrássy had, who directed the diplomacy of the monarchy after serving as prime minister. But control over joint military affairs was never entrusted to a Hungarian. Sisi and the Hungarians. Franz Joseph's wife, Queen Elizabeth, was renowned for her beauty and affectionately known as Sisi. She played a significant role in encouraging reconciliation between the emperor and the Hungarian people. Sisi always felt a deep connection to the freedom-loving Hungarians and was somewhat apprehensive of the strict protocols of the Viennese court. She learned Hungarian, even convincing the emperor to exchange letters in the language, and immersed herself in Hungarian history and literature. She enjoyed spending time at the palace in Gödöllő and formed a genuine friendship with Andrássy. When, in 1898, she was assassinated in Geneva by an anarchist, Hungarians deeply mourned her death. To this day, Hungarians hold her memory dear, adorning her resting place in Vienna with wreaths and the colors of her beloved nation, red, white, and green. Prosperity in Hungary. Those happy and peaceful decades before the First World War brought unprecedented prosperity to Hungary. During that time, the civil state was established, ensuring equality before the law, the emancipation of the Jews, and the upholding of civil rights. Numerous hospitals, schools, and both private and public institutions were established from the ground up. It was within the transportation network, however, that the most remarkable progress was made. In 1846, the first railway line opened, running between Pest and Vác, and only half a century later, by 1913, the country boasted an extensive railway network spanning 22,000 kilometers. This remarkable growth led to an annual passenger traffic of 166 million people. Preceding centuries had seen Hungary's international trade focus largely around its agricultural produce. By this time, however, alongside exporting significant food products, the country saw a huge development in cutting-edge industries such as machine manufacturing, vehicle production, electrical engineering, and the chemical industry. The superior quality of the Hungarian industry is evidenced by numerous global patents. It was engineers at the Ganz factory in Budapest who invented the transformer, an essential component for harnessing electrical power, as well as the injector required for internal combustion engines. Until the early 20th century, the Ganz Works electrical engineering factory proved a worthy competitor to the largest of American and German companies. The factory's achievements include construction of the world's first electrical railway line in Italy in 1902. The pace of Hungary's GDP growth was one of the fastest in Europe, but despite this, emerging Hungarian industries couldn't provide employment for everyone. In the decades around the turn of the century, approximately 1 million Hungarians emigrated to the US, most with the intention of returning home after a few years of work. The majority found jobs as factory workers or miners. Hungarian communities of thousands sprang up in numerous cities, where they built churches and schools. In the early 20th century, in Cleveland alone, 7 Hungarian-language newspapers were published. National minorities. Hungary was a country of many nationalities. Although the ethnic Hungarian population gradually increased, reaching 54% of the country's demographic by 1910, a significant portion of ethnic minorities resided in separate clusters in rural areas of the country. Whilst Hungarian remained the state language and the administration upheld the concept of a single political nation, government policy was unusually liberal compared to its European counterparts. Comprehensive individual rights were granted to the different ethnic minorities, who could manage their official affairs in their native tongue in the areas where they resided. Additionally, they had opportunities for cultural self-expression, operating native language press, and forming their own associations. The Compulsory Elementary Education Act of 1868 stated that every student shall receive education in their native language. Several ethnic groups had their own secondary schools. An Irishman in Britain or a Breton in France could not have dreamt of such opportunities. Some ethnic groups, however, began demanding territorial autonomy within the territory of Hungary, with a long-term goal of independence. Following the emergence of Serbia and Romania, they strived for unification with their respective mother countries. This ultimately became the source of irreconcilable conflicts. Budapest. In 1901, the US government formed a commission to gather insights into urban planning for Washington, D.C. The commission visited Europe's 6 most important cities, including Budapest. Formed from the unification of Pest, Buda and Óbuda in 1872, Budapest had experienced rapid growth, becoming the 8th most populous city in Europe. The cityscape boasted wide, tree-lined boulevards with eclectic and historicist-style architecture. Buildings sprang up like mushrooms, including tenements, palaces, schools, banks, hotels, theaters, clubs, and coffee houses. These structures showcased the diverse richness of city life, and on both sides of the Danube, Budapest presented an impressive urban panorama. The Opera House in Budapest outshone even the magnificent ones in Vienna and Paris with its breathtaking beauty. Among its many attractions, Budapest proudly housed the world's most opulent coffee house, the New York Café. The Parliament building on the banks of the Danube held the distinction of being the largest parliamentary edifice on the planet when it was built. Such buildings conveyed the Hungarian people's optimism and ambition, which was also reflected in the spectacular festivities held in 1896, commemorating the 1000th anniversary of Hungary's existence. The glorious echoes of the past fueled hope for a prosperous future. The city rapidly embraced modernization. Budapest was the first to introduce incandescent lamps and became home to the first underground railway in continental Europe. Hungarians around the world. After a long hiatus, Hungarians once again took an active role within the international cultural scene. Artists such as Franz Liszt and the painter Mihály Munkácsy were globally celebrated, and Hungarian scientists, inventors and engineers made significant contributions to progress within the Western world. Ignác Semmelweis, an obstetrician at Budapest's Rókos Hospital, discovered the causes and prevention of the dreaded puerperal fever, a potentially fatal postpartum infection, thus earning the public name of Savior of Mothers. Tivadar Puskás worked for Thomas Edison in the US, and the world's first experimental telephone exchange implemented in Boston in 1877 was based on his idea. He was also responsible for establishing telephone exchanges in Paris and Budapest. In 1892, in Budapest, he created the world's first electronic news and entertainment service, known as the Telephone News Service. Of the three designers of the famous Model T Ford, chosen as the car of the century, two were Hungarian, with József Galam's role being particularly significant. Hungarians were also present at the birth of the modern Olympics. In a photo taken during the first Games in 1896, Dr. Ferenc Kemény can be seen among the 7-member Executive International Olympic Committee. At the inaugural Athens Olympics, Hungarian athlete Alfred Hajós won both the 100 and 1200-meter freestyle swimming events. Interestingly, he was also a Hungarian football champion. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, a verdict. Opinions regarding the system that lasted for half a century and was known as the dual monarchy remains a subject of debate. At that time, a significant portion of Hungarian society viewed the Compromise of 1867 as having abandoned the ideals of the 1848 revolution and betraying the nation's sovereignty. Nonetheless, most historians agree that this period was one of great development in modern Hungarian history, establishing Hungary as a major power on the European stage and yielding numerous enduring economic and cultural achievements. Ultimately, however, Lajos Kossuth was proven right. At the outbreak of the First World War, the Hungarian people were not in a position to be masters of their own destiny, and for that, they paid a price.